Hello and welcome to the O&M Stockroom. We're your hosts Brian McGarry
and Ken O'Malley.
Tonight is episode 31 of Complimentary Cinema. If you are new to the channel, Complimentary Cinema is a program where we review and discuss films that you can watch for free that are available on YouTube. Please be warned, we discuss these films in detail, so consider this a full spoiler alert. So this was my turn to pick. We always pick a film basically just by sight. We just scroll through the free YouTube library. And we saw Weekend at Bernie's.
Yes.
And this is a film that I remember seeing at least part of when I was a very little kid on my dad's, HBO or Skinamax or whatever. And I just thought, oh, hey, that's a pretty funny movie, right?
Yes, this was a movie I've heard the name of, but knew absolutely nothing about it.
So that's what we reviewed tonight. So this was, what's the year and director on stats on this one?
Yeah, this was a movie from 1989, directed by Ted Ketchoff and written by Robert Klein. It is also starring, the main characters are Andrew McCarthy as Larry Wilson, Jonathan Silverman as Richard Parker. Those are our two protagonists, but also very much featuring Terry Kaiser as Bernie Lomax.
And Catherine Mary Stewart as Gwen Saunders.
And Don Calfa as Paulie.
That's pretty much it. That's everyone of consequence.
Yeah, there's a number of other smaller characters, but that's the main parts.
So whenever we review one of these films, we have to ask ourselves, does it fulfill three primary criteria? That criteria is it well written? Is it well acted? And is it well produced? We shall find out in the course of this conversation.
Indeed.
So Ken, lay the land for us on this one.
So this is a comedy film set in the New York City in the late 80s. Our main characters are two kind of young people in the business world. They work for an insurance company, and they're spending their free time, their weekend, trying to come up with their big breakthrough as far as like finding people who are scamming the company for money so that they can move up the corporate ladder.
And they do find a good piece of information. They find somebody who had submitted multiple life insurance claims that overlapped after the person died. And they bring that information to their boss, Mr. Bernie Lomax, on Monday. And he is very impressed and decides to invite them over for the weekend.
And it's worth noting at this point that Bernie is very much, seems like very much like a partier, lives a big life. He's got a fancy car.
Several fancy cars.
All the women, everything. He's got a boat.
A man who absolutely wants for nothing.
And our main two characters are kind of just schmucks. They're just, they have nothing. They want, something bigger for themselves. So they're very driven.
Well, one of them is very driven, and one of them is very scheming.
Yeah, I guess he wants to live the life. He just doesn't want to do the work to get there.
That's relatable, right? So before they end up at Bernie's for the weekend, Bernie ends up meeting with a couple of his associates at a restaurant to discuss these two young men.
Yeah, he wants them killed. It turns out that he's the one that's been scamming the books as far as collecting on multiple people's deaths. And the mob is running the business, and they don't want to do a hit for him, but he talks them into it.
He sure does. He tries to convince them to rub off these two young men who were being little scampers and digging up dirt, but they decide that it is in fact Bernie who is causing the mob too much trouble. So on the day that the two young men arrive to Bernie's house, instead of them getting whacked, Paulie, played by Don Calfa, he's the one who rubs out Bernie.
And from there, hijinks ensue.
Many hijinks. The men show up. They make themselves cozy. They soon discover, oh my God, Bernie is dead. They've got to call the police. They've got to do something about this. The situation has to be rectified. as soon as possible. And then a beautiful, big-titted blonde shows up to borrow some boat keys and talks about how all the great parties are at Bernie's every weekend. And this gets the young men's mind turning.
Yes, they notice immediately once people start showing up for this party at the house that no one notices that Bernie is dead. They're all talking to him, complimenting him. The one guy's trying to buy his car from him, and no one realizes because they put sunglasses on him and he's just sitting on a couch. No one realizes he's dead. So they realize they have an opportunity to party and hang out still at this place, and no one even notices that he is dead.
And part of the B plot to this film is one of the young men, Richard, has been chasing after an intern at his work named Gwen, played by Catherine Mary Stewart. And he had a date with her the night before that he absolutely blew. And then her showing up to the party convinces him, well, wait a minute, maybe this can work out in my favor.
And it's worth noting that he blew the date because he lied to her, that he lived with his parents. And so she was upset with him for lying.
So naturally, in that situation, what are you going to do? Lie even bigger.
Yes.
So where do you go from here in the discussion of the film?
Well, like I said, it's a lot of hijinks. The particulars aren't so important as far as general comedic things happen, general funny scenarios.
Essentially, all turns out well in the end, but essentially this is a movie about two stupid assholes.
Yes.
Taking advantage of the fact that this guy's dead.
And just, on one hand, trying to do the best they can, just to, get out of the situation. And then on the other hand, just being young, irresponsible, people.
They have incredibly primal motives for everything that they do.
And everything, too, is kind of the way it's revealed, where, first it's revealed that Bernie's dead, but they don't know why Bernie's dead. They just think that he's overdosed on the drugs, or killed himself or whatever. And so a big part of the plot of the movie is just unveiling to them eventually then, Bernie wasn't killed. He was killed. It wasn't.
Bernie was murdered.
He didn't do it to himself.
He didn't do it to himself. He was murdered. And in fact, the original people to be murdered were going to be them, which makes them very upset, of course.
So this plot has developed, there's funny things between, but that's the general plot, is basically them figuring out. Once they figure out that they were the ones that originally had hit out on them, they are convinced that someone is out to get them. So that leads to a whole nother set of entertaining things.
So let's
but really what the movie is having fun in the Hamptons, showing all this fun beach parties, going out on boats.
It's really just a kind of a schlocky beach party film, absolutely. So let's critique this beach party film.
Okay.
So it's set up as a comedy, and it's not that funny.
It's not laugh out loud funny, for sure, at least not for me.
It reminds me of that Norm Macdonald quote about Woody Allen. It's not funny, haha, like a Woody Allen film. It's funny, haha, like a Woody Allen marriage.
Wow.
And it's a little bit more of the latter because it's funny, but it's pretty cringy.
It's just one of those everything that happens, these goofy guys up to their antics, but there's nothing that some things are kind of funny because it's just related to this guy's dead, and they keep bringing him around to different places and doing stuff. And yeah, it's fun. It's not funny. It's just kind of fun.
At least the comedy in this film is situational, but it's very slapsticky, and it's not at Three Stooges level either. It's at a Saturday Night level of schlock.
Okay, I guess that's fair.
Saturday Night Live kind of schlock.
I feel like the concept is supposed to be carrying the humor throughout the whole thing, and I got tired of just that being the humor. Like, it was funny for a little while, and then it's like, all right, well, they're just gonna use his body for another, like, now they're dragging him through the water.
They dragged him through the water. They dragged him around town. They put him in a sports car style golf cart.
And part of the problem too with that is that they kept showing, like, foreshadowing things, I think. So there was never any surprise that Bernie was going to show up. Like, probably one of the best executed ones is when he gets tossed into the water or into the beach, and then the tide comes in and washes him out.
Yeah, and then he shows up later
And his body is washing up on shore when our main character is trying to make out with the girl right next to him.
That was amusing.
And he was going in and out with the tide. But even that wasn't just like laugh out loud funny. It was just kind of like...
It was sensible, chuckle amusing.
Yeah.
So here's the other thing that kind of kills me, pun intended. By the next day, his body would have set into rigor mortis, and he would have been as stiff as a board. And at no point does this corpse lose its limberness.
Yeah, they kept it loose just, for fun. Just so they could keep posing him, and he kept doing...
Like he was a life-size action figure.
Like, a main other part of this B-plot is Paulie, kills him on the first try and gets off the island and everything's fine. But then the girlfriend shows up.
The girlfriend of the mob boss that decided to put the hit out on Bernie.
Yeah.
Because she was having an affair with Bernie.
Right.
One of the other henchmen shows up and sees that she showed up and is having sex with his corpse, not realizing he's dead. Which would insinuate rigor mortis had set in by now.
Well, just for comedic effect.
For comedic effect. So the word gets out, maybe Paulie's slipping. Maybe Paulie isn't as good of a hitman as we were led to believe. So he has to come back and do the job again.
So all of these little things are like, yeah, it's humorous. Like, it's a comedy, but it's not like it's all situational, and you get it right away. It's like, okay, every joke in the rest of the movie is going to be about him being dead, and either the people think he's alive and they're trying to kill him still, or they have to figure out what to do with this body they keep dragging around, and people don't realize that he's dead.
The pacing in this film is terrible. It takes probably a good third to 40% of the movie just to get to the part where Bernie is actually dead. The amount of setup and build up to that is pretty incredible.
Yeah. I didn't really know what was happening. Like, until the scene with the mob boss, I didn't really know what this movie was about or what it was going to be. And it took a little while to get there.
It took a little while to get there. Not that that's a bad thing, but it just feels really uneven overall. It feels like they took too long in some spots and they kind of rushed some other things.
So one of the things, the problems, I think, is that the main characters aren't that endearing. They're just too stupid to really feel sorry for.
It's not even that they're stupid. It's that they're jerks. They're stupid jerks. It's the combination. If they were just stupid, you might feel bad for them. If they were just jerks, you might have more fun at their expense. But they're stupid jerks, so you never really know exactly how to feel about them.
And I think if the guy playing Larry had a little more charm, I think the role might come off differently.
Yeah, so Larry, Andrew McCarthy, the entire film, I just wanted him to shut up because he had the most annoying voice. His voice it felt like nails on a chalkboard to me. It was kind of high-pitched and kind of whiny and, oh, man, and it kind of had that thing going. That was a lot. And oh God, what was the other guy's name? Silverman? Jonathan Silverman. Perfectly fine actor. The entire time I was looking at him, it was Dollar Store David Schwimmer. Dollar Store David Schwimmer is what Jonathan Silverman looks like, at least back in the late 80s. And he had such a pretty boy, soft, smooth face. And anytime you paired him with his love interest, Gwen, who just looked more mature and even a touch more masculine than him, it was kind of just a funny little balance there. Maybe not the best casting choices. But
yeah,
whatever.
I mean, I think for what the movie is, they did fine. This is not. We are not the target demographic for this movie.
The target demographic for this film, I think, is 60 years old now.
Well, yes.
This is definitely a film that people, I think, would have found more funny 30 years ago as opposed to today.
Well, and people that are a little bit younger.
Sure.
I'm just saying, this is a stupid teenager film.
It is a stupid teenager film, but it's also kind of a boomer film a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, it's just... I think what we find funny now is a little more... I don't know.
So the thing that is the part, I guess the parts... It's not that all of that's bad. There definitely is parts that's amusing because of just how ridiculous it is and how stupid it is. There's several moments where it works. But I think that's, like I said, kind of ruined by the fact that you see it all coming and there's nothing else. Like, they got as creative as they could with bringing a dead body around and doing different things with it.
In the scenario of being on a really beautiful beach house on an island.
And this house is amazing.
The house is amazing. The house deserves its own credit in the film, as far as I'm concerned. It is definitely one of my favorite characters in this film.
Yes.
So let's talk about some of the performances in this film. We've touched a little bit on Andrew McCarthy and Jonathan Silverman. Let's talk about Gwen.
Yeah. So
Catherine Mary Stewart's.
She is a complimentary cinema alum. She was in the first movie we reviewed, Night of the Comet.
Yes, I don't remember her character's name in that, but that was a zombie-esque film from 1984, which is pretty terrible, but we enjoyed, as I recall. And, God, who else? We also have...
Bernie.
Yeah, there's
Terry
Bernie.
Kaiser.
Yeah, Terry Kaiser. I don't think I've seen him in anything before. He did really good at playing a ridiculous floppy dead corpse.
I said the only reason this movie works, is because his character in the first part where he's alive is like super extra, and I really enjoyed it.
He really sold it well. He really did.
He played that really like surface level guy who's just always partying, like always, like you could see him being that guy that everyone keeps talking about through the rest of the film with the parties and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And when he's just a corpse, he absolutely sells that he's just a dead body.
And his facial expressions and just everything is perfect, right on the nose.
Definitely one of the high points of the film is definitely his role in that.
I mean, it takes a lot of skill to have your body being flopped around and all that stuff and keep straight, make it look like he's dead, but then also everything, all of your limbs and your head and everything is in the correct place at all times. So I think that's actually pretty impressive.
Now, some of the mob guys, Polly.
Yeah.
What's Polly's name again?
Don Calfa.
Okay, so Don Calfa, who played Polly, he was in Return of the Living Dead from 1984, which is a really great kind of Halloween zombie movie that we should definitely watch sometime. I think you'd enjoy it. He plays a mortician in that film. So I knew him from something. I did not expect him to see black hair, but he definitely made a great schmarmy hitman for the Italian mob. The guy who played the mob boss, he did great in his brief little scene. And that pretty much is it. Everyone else just kind of comes and goes.
It's his dad apparently is the director.
The mob boss?
No. The Richard, the one of the two guys, the Jonathan Silverman. His dad, the one that's shirtless that walks through the apartment.
Yeah.
That's the director.
That's the director of this piece of shit? Wow, that's amazing. His cameo was to walk around in underwear with no shirt on.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love it.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about the most useless or extraneous character.
Yeah, there's... I mean, some of the side characters they're not really extraneous. They're just at the party, or
We have so many side characters in this film.
they didn't really need the second hitman guy. Like there was the one that Don carried out the job, but then there was the other guy that was like looking through binoculars to like confirm that he was dead.
Yeah, he seemed a little extra, but his role did facilitate in the main hitman coming back to finish the job, thus more hijinks.
But I was saying they could have found a way for that guy, just like they did later on with the ferry, to see for himself.
Yeah.
So they didn't really need that character.
Didn't really need him. One really minor character that I enjoyed was the bratty little kid.
Oh yeah.
He has a couple brief scenes. He just shows up and he's just a little shit like kids are.
Yeah.
Or kids can be, rather.
It turns out Bernie is on the beach. You know, he got thrown off the deck at one point, and this little kid found him and just started burying his body with sand.
Like you do.
And he was just a troublemaker about it.
You know, it's like kiss my ass, and he flips him off later on, and
Yeah.
he
Shooting
shows
a
up.
cap gun.
Yeah, shows up again just to be annoying. Great little kid. All right, let's soundtrack.
It was generic 80s.
You definitely got that generic 80s party thing going. They did have some music in the climactic scene with the Polly the Hitman and the young men. They had a really great old school Sony tape deck. I'm a big fan of the old, what is now considered vintage hi-fi. So that for me was a pleasant little moment. We got to hear some classical music, and God, what else was playing?
I don't know the songs exactly, but yeah, it was all 80s. There was a lot of like kind of electronic background music.
Just dance music, 80s dance.
Yeah.
So overall, this film looms large in my mind because it made such an impression on me as a kid. So I remember seeing a little bit of it and thinking it was really funny, and just the fact that it was always a movie that you saw at Blockbuster and places like that. It was always a popular film to rent, and I just had this impression of it being this really classic, funny 80s movie. And even if you look at IMDb, it's got pretty mixed reviews, and it hasn't aged that well.
Yeah, I don't think it holds up. There's like the body, like I said, the body humor is decent. Just it's fun for a diversion, but it's certainly not. There's a number of other 80s movies with physical comedy that I would pick before this one. I would rate much higher.
Yeah, when I think of like good physical comedy, I think of stuff like Mr. Bean, where it's very subtle and more nuanced and not so schlocky and in your face like this film is.
Another film we watched that did it very well was Clue.
Oh, absolutely.
Clue had some excellent body humor.
It did, and it didn't linger on the one joke too long. The main fault of this film, I think, is that it just has the one real gimmick. Is, oh yeah, we got this guy that is dead and we're pretending he's not.
Right.
That ultimately is the whole thread of the film right there.
And I think for what it is, it's fine. Like, I guess that's my main takeaway, is that for its time, for its audience, this movie was fine. Obviously it was popular and successful, and it's not on the caliber with the classics, I think, of the era, as far as even just general comedy goes.
Yeah, it just doesn't do it for me. I enjoyed it seeing it the once. I never ever would watch this film again.
No. It scares me that there are sequels that exist. And how far down in quality did those drop?
Oh, I don't even know.
They must. I mean, it must be.
It's got to be dreadful. There's at least one more. At least.
Yeah.
I don't even know how many they made. I haven't seen any of those, but I definitely wouldn't now. If this is where the bar is set, it's I can't limbo that low. I'd break my legs and my back.
I enjoyed just kind of the lay of the land at that time. You know, seeing some parts of New York they're in the streets in New York City on the roof, and just out in the Hamptons and all that stuff. Those parts were great, just to get the scenery and just a feel for that time.
They really make New York just feel like an absolute cesspool.
Yeah,
They achieved that very well,
well,
to really make the Hamptons just so nice.
Well, because they talk about it the whole time they're there, complaining about how like they have no money. The place the one guy's renting is tiny and filled with cockroaches, and every bad thing about living in a big city like that.
I'm not going to lie, it reminded me of neighborhoods in Portland.
Yeah.
There are a couple neighborhoods in Portland like that where the guy's got the girl out on that first date, and there's, just garbage, and there's garbage trucks, and
everything's loud.
Everything's loud and just irritating, and there's ugly people everywhere. It's like, I get it. So, did this film meet the 3 primary criteria, Ken?
Well, is it well written? I think for what it is well enough written.
It's well enough. For Rent It and Forget It, it's okay.
If I hold it to the standard of other dumb teenage movies, comedy movies I've seen,
the writing would have benefited from tighter editing and maybe recasting the 2 protagonists.
Yeah,
honestly,
I think you're definitely right there. If you got like a generational, like really good actor in that role, really funny person, they may have taken it a different direction.
I mean, just think of like Matthew Broderick and what the hell's his name? The guy who played Cameron.
Yes.
And Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like, those are 2 fantastic actors who made a fantastic pair. And you don't really have... They're kind of shooting for a similar dynamic with these 2 guys, and they don't come close.
Right. Like,
they just don't come close.
The buddies, 2 different kind of personalities playing off each other. You've seen it before in other movies better.
In many movies better. So yeah, that really was the weak point, was just, tighter editing, recast those guys. Yeah. Not that they're terrible actors, but they didn't bring it home on this one.
They just didn't sell the the one guy's a little more like neurotic, and then the other guy's more like devil may care. But they didn't really sell it hard enough, I think.
They sold it too hard in the beginning, I think.
Yeah.
They oversold it, and then they overacted through most of this film, is my thing.
Yeah. So we're saying written,
Written okay. It definitely needed better acting to bring the writing out more.
Yeah. Agreed. I think it was uneven acting. We could say that.
Sloppy. All right.
Parts were good, parts were bad. And then, of course, well produced.
Sure, they got this beautiful house. They got some great locations. Definitely could afford a hell of a lot of people for this film.
Everything looked pretty good. Now, I will say, as far as production, part of what makes a good comedy too, though, is the way things are shot, the way things are. Obviously they had a good location, good, like the house and all that stuff was great. So that's very much part of it. But part of it is like the editing, which obviously we know there's too much. They didn't do enough editing here. The way they composed some shots didn't help with the comedy either. Like there's just a lot of times where we're just focused, looking at this group of 3 or 4 people. It's a still shot, and we're just focused on them the whole time. There's no movement,
So like the writing, it's okay.
I mean, they did good on the location, on the, there's a lot of good things that they did. Because you really felt like this was all New York, this was plausible as a place, It's a mixed bag.
The whole film is a mixed bag. All right, what's the last criteria there?
we already kind of touched on it. Well acted.
Well acted? Yeah, no. Well, the guy who played Bernie did okay. Gwen did pretty good. Polly was great. The 2 main jerks were okay.
Yeah.
Overall, the film was okay.
overall, it was okay. It could have been better.
Ken, the real question is, would you recommend this film to anybody?
I would not recommend this film.
I would not recommend this film either. If you're at home drunk late one night and have nothing better to do, sure, watch it. I wouldn't necessarily say that anybody spend the hour and 40 minutes to intentionally sit down and watch this, though.
I mean, if you want to watch a movie about like the funny hijinks that you would have with a dead guy in New York, then this is the movie for you.
If you want a weirdly specific thing like that, then yes, absolutely watch this film.
If you're not into that, then no.
Amen.
You heard it here.
That's a wrap for tonight's episode here at the O&M Stockroom. We are your hosts, Brian McGarry
and Ken O'Malley.
If you enjoyed this segment of Complimentary Cinema, more episodes can be found at omstockroom.com, along with links to our Patreon page and various streaming outlets. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week with an all-new episode.